Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share the vids. Thank you very much. I have with me Venu from Venu's Cricket Catch Up and Asjad from Cricket4Us 2.0, and we are going to discuss what can probably be described as a great escape. I'm not going to call it a comeback because it wasn't a win. So I think it's a great escape considering India were in a very difficult position and in a losing position and managed to fight their way back on day 5 to draw the third test match and keep it at 1 apiece going into the 5th test match, which will then be a decider, I'm assuming, as long as it's, did I say 5th? I keep on saying the 5th. I keep on thinking it's the 4th test match at the Gabba, which I think Australia are I think they're pretty confident they're going to win that, but after this maybe that confidence has dwindled a little bit. Okay, let's go to you first, Venu. Going into day 5, because I think we're going to concentrate a little bit on, I guess, the back end of day 4 and day 5. What were you thinking? Because in my thoughts, I'm just thinking Australia are going to clean them up, to be honest with you.
I thought Australia will win, probably with a session to spare, but I don't think they'll get cleaned up. I thought there'll be some resistance from the batters, but I didn't expect them to resist, that well. Like Vihari was 6 not out of 100 balls. That was at one point, which is a ridiculous effort, but a fantastic effort from an Indian batsman, and in particular Pant as well. The way he attacked the ball, especially he attacked Lyon and he took him out of the attack. That's how well he was batting. And at one point when India were, have a look, when Pant got out, we were 3 for 250. The victory seemed possible at one point in the match. So they did well considering they lost Pant and Pujara, who were the 2 set batsmen in the second innings. They got out in quite quick succession. So Rishabhpant got out 4 for 250, and Pujara got out 5 for 272. So they both got a quick succession. You're thinking then, actually, Australia are going to win this now. Because we were saying before that the Indian tail can't really bat, and luckily for them, Ashwin stood up, and you didn't really get into that tail. Jadeja was injured as well. You got to remember, he had I think it's a fractured thumb. So the fact that you didn't go into the bowlers of Saini, Bumrah, and Siraj, that shows how much of a good effort it was from India. But I think Australia will probably, especially timpaine, will look back and look at the drop catches. I think that's, as we said before, catches win matches. But overall, a good performance from India.
Yeah, I agree. I think given the injuries, etc., as well, and I thought Australia were going to get the win, to be honest with you. And Rishabh Pant, you make a really good point. So when I was watching, I watched quite a bit of the match of the day, to be fair, and obviously just caught the highlights after. But Rishabh Pant, I watched most of his innings, and at the start he was going pretty slowly, and then he just went into his usual way of playing, which, as Asjad knows as well, is pretty attacking. And he just took Lyon on, and I think there was an over where basically he hit Lyon for a 4 over mid-on, and then next ball he hit him for a 6 over cow corner, and that basically started it, where he just thought, I'm going to target Nathan Lyon and I'm going to use my feet to get on the track, and he used it quite well. And a striker of 82, considering they were trying to save the game, really, I think the win for India was a far and distant dream, to be honest with you. He actually gave a very, I think it was necessary, that type of innings to play, because the issue is if you have every single batsman just shutting up shop like Vihari, then the bowlers get comfortable and they don't need to change how they're bowling, if that makes sense. Yeah, they want to get wickets, but they're not worried about runs, etc. Whereas as soon as Pant started counter-attacking like that a little bit, it gave a different dimension. So I think that was, for me, probably the most vital knock for India anyway, surviving. Asjad, what's your take then on the test match as a whole? And yeah, I mean, from an Indian perspective, I mean, Venu was saying beforehand, and I think I said this about Pakistan, if we drew that test match against New Zealand, yeah, okay, we drew the test match because it's a really good escape, but we didn't win it at the end of the day. So do you think they need to kind of just temper themselves and say, okay, we've drawn it. It's a good little escape, but let's just now take that as a positive into the final test and try and win that and win the series now, rather than celebrating, because it's not really too much to celebrate.
To be honest, the way I see it is, right, so after the first day, there were 3 consecutive days, in my opinion, that Australia won all the days completely, right? So on this final day, the way India came out to fight and the way they showed the resilience, right? I think that's why everyone in Indian media, Indian players, everyone is looking at this as not exactly as a win, but a draw is probably as almost equal to that win that they could have potentially gotten. That's the reason why I think they're looking at it like that. It was highly unlikely that India was going to draw, especially after that first wicket fell this morning with Rahane going in the second or third over of the day, right? It was almost like every like pundit around, right? They were talking about what's his name? They were talking about India getting all out by lunch, right? Almost everyone was talking about it. Okay, especially because as we pointed out, Rishabhpant was injured, right? He only came out and then he tried to, he looked a bit uncomfortable initially, but after that drop chance from Timpaine, then he started to kind of loosen his arms a little. Then Ravi Jadeja had a glove on his like fractured thumb. He wanted to bat, but again, how effective would he have been, especially on with his left thumb being quite, fractured and broken and stuff, right? Then eventually you get to Vihari and all those. But all in all, I think the reason why Indian media and a lot of people are looking at this as something that is almost equal to a win is because they didn't think they were going to draw it whatsoever.
Yeah, okay, I see your point. I think maybe I'm just a bit competitive in the sense that, yeah, I would be happy with it, but I'll just say, you know
To
what?
be honest, if Pakistan had drawn that test match
Mm.
against New Zealand, right? Okay, the first test match,
Yeah,
I would have looked at it as something more, something better than a win because we saw Pakistan draw the test match, right? It wasn't like, because Pakistan couldn't have won it. That's the thing. If you know you can't win it, the only bad thing is when Rishabh Pant got out at that moment, I think Venu, you already mentioned that India looked like they were potentially going to win. They needed almost 150 of 50 overs or something, right? Which is something that's possible. But after that wicket, again, they had to go into their shell. On top of that, when Vihari got injured, they still needed about just under 4 and over to win the game. But as soon
yeah,
as Vihari got injured, they realized they can't, they can't try and go for the win. They had to go for the
yeah.
draw.
I mean,
Because
not with how Pujara was batting. You're never going to win a match like that,
no,
unfortunately.
come on,
When
man.
you need 3 and
Pujara,
over.
as soon as Pant got out, Pujara smashed Cummins for like 3 fours in a row, right? He was like, yeah, I'm here to stay. And then Hazelwood just balled an absolute beauty, right? So you can't really argue with that. He got him on a brilliant delivery.
Yeah.
But as soon as Vihari got out, Vihari got injured, basically, his hamstring. Right? Since that point, I think India knew they weren't going to go for the win. They were going to go for the draw.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. I think something that was quite interesting. It's funny because Rishabh Pant didn't look injured, did he? After being injured in the previous days. And this might come across as controversial, but we know that Saha's a much better keeper than Rishabh Pant. So it just seems a little bit convenient to me that he kept instead of Rishabh Pant after he dropped catches in the first innings and then he batted. But I'm sure it might just be a niggle, to be honest, that he recovered from whilst batting, or it could be a little bit of the dark arts. But anyway, we'll never know for sure. But Venu, what do you think then? Well, Australia should be really disappointed, right? Because they had a day and a bit to bowl them out. And considering Jadeja wasn't there, there's no Kohli. Pant, I mean, I thought he might be injured, but obviously he wasn't. What do you think? Do you think they'll dust themselves off and they'll go back into the 5th test and they'll be thinking, you know what, the Gabba's a fortress and we'll just do our business there?
I think they'll be disappointed. I think Asha made a good point and I think you made a good point as well, Fazan, that Australia will look back at this and see India celebrating like they've won the match. And I think they'll take a lot from that and say, actually, look, India was celebrating here, that they're winning. Now let's put them a good show and beat them in Brisbane. But let's be honest here, right? something has to be said about Australian mentality here, because this is the second time in a couple of years. You look back to Ben Stokes' innings, Headingley 2019, similar position, and where Australia seemed, they're dead set to win the match, and they've let another one slip away. And fortunately enough, it wasn't a loss this time; it was a draw. But still, something has to be said about Australian mentality, and it wasn't good to see, them sledging as well. I don't think it didn't really cross the line, but still, you just kind of think about the Australian mentality, winning at all costs, and and I think the drop catches by Payne was disappointing. But this is the best. This is one of the best bowling attacks going right now, with Hazelwood, Lyon, Cummins, and Stark, and with Jadeja injured as well. Ashwin, his back was gone. Vihari was injured, and the amount of injuries India accumulated and managed to pull off a draw. I think that just shows, how well India played, and why Indian media in particular, I think, are showing this as a win. It's just, how did they do it? But I think something has to be said about the Australian mentality, and especially how to close matches off as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's a good comparison to draw. Obviously, England, won that match. So there's a slight difference there, but the similarities in the sense that Australia's mentality of not being able to close out a match was pretty prevalent yesterday, and they looked a bit bereft of ideas, to be honest with you. I think I don't know what it is. It's Cameron Green only getting 7 overs I don't know. For me, it's a bit weird, because if the bowlers are not getting overs, and for me, what I would have done is, personally, I would have said, okay, yeah, 1 second, Venu, I'll come to you. I would have said, you know what, Stark, for example, he did bowl shorter spells, but I would have bowled him in very, literally 3-4 over bursts, even 5 overs maximum, and then Green can make up those overs, because they're not going to get the total. And I know you were saying about that, they could have gone at 3 and over for 50 overs, but that's so tough in a test match, and you hardly ever see that. So I just think, especially in day 5, I think they could have gone that way, and even with Cummins as well, done it. I think Hazelwood is different. He can bowl for longer spells. Cummins can to a degree, but Stark, I think, is your wicket-taking option. For me, that's how I would have gone about it. I don't know if it would have made too much of a difference, because Nathan Lyon, I think, was a bit underwhelming, considering it's day 5, and normally he's the one that gets, a bucket load of wickets on day 5, and they played him well. But that's just a kind of different angle. Venu, what were you going to say?
I was going to mention that I think we say Australian attack's one of the best in the world, but you look at New Zealand, they've got an enforcer in Neil Wagner, and he showed that again in Pakistan as well, and he was so useful. And the fact he can bowl short pitch deliveries, and he can really extract a wicket from a pitch that's not doing much. And I think they did miss a player like that in today. But yeah, I do think Lyon was also underwhelming as well. So he made a good point as well, Faisal.
Yeah, he's normally so good, isn't he? Go on, Asjad.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with Lyon, you expect the pitch to deteriorate even further on day 5, but it seemed like the pitch just became a road basically throughout this final day, that he just wasn't getting the turn or bounce you expect on a day 5 pitch, especially because initially I saw that first few overs, I was like, yeah, okay, he's getting turned. Then it was that drop, and after that point, when when Pant started to attack him, he just started to change up his plans completely, and therefore he was taken out of the attack as well. One thing I actually thought Australians messed up on was they were bowling just short deliveries after the 100th over, right? All they were doing was bowling short deliveries until Mitchell Stark came back at the 123rd or something over, and he came in and he pitched up the ball. He got 2 edges, one carried, one didn't. He bowled a couple of Yorkers, which Vihari could not play, but they were outside off stump, so he basically missed it. And then he was getting the ball to reverse, which is something that Australia did not use whatsoever in that final innings. So that was something that I was very, very surprised about. And I was kind of disappointed. If I was an Australian, diehard Australian fan, I'd think, oh, they've lost the plot completely. And then, yeah, I agree with you, Venu, about the sledging and all that stuff. That was uncalled for. It wasn't terrible. It was quite funny as well at parts. but it was, yeah, but it wasn't the greatest thing to see, especially after, the racial abuse thing happening for the past 2 days, and then the Australian team comes out and then you start saying kind of rude stuff.
The issue with that is that Australia have a track record for going over the line. That's the issue. And as soon as they started to potentially get into a position where they thought, actually, we might not be able to win this game, I think that's when it started. And the issue as well is that Timpaine was giving it to Ashwin, but then he dropped 2 catches in the end and had a pretty poor day behind the stump. So it's all well and good doing it, but you've got to back it up then. So I think that's the issue. Go on, Venu.
It's funny that on that exchange, Ashwin was alluding to when he's speaking to Payne that, that potentially, he could be coming towards the end of his Test career.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be the case with Timpaine?
He's quite old. He's 36 now, I think. So my uncle actually, I'm gonna tell you a little story. My uncle played against him when he was at university, I think, younger than us, in his early 20s, and he nicked off to my uncle, caught a gully. So it's quite a nice little story that he told me. But yeah, so quite cool. I was talking to him about it actually yesterday.
What's the relevance?
The relevance is that we're talking about Timpaine.
Yeah, but about his Test match.
Yeah.
Did your uncle play in this Test match, Fazan? Did your uncle play in this Test match? Did you nick?
No, unfortunately not. He's a little bit older than Timpaine. But anyway, so I think he is coming to the end of his career. I think but as a wicketkeeper batsman, you can go a little bit longer. I reckon he's maybe got 1 or 2 years maximum probably left, I would assume. It depends on his form as well. The other thing I would say is, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I think it's worth us mentioning, because I think if it was India, I would mention it. If it was anyone else, I'd mention it. And I think, considering it's Australia, we should mention it. Steve Smith, I don't know if you saw, but him scratching the guard. I know Venu's laughing, but to be honest, that's pretty poor. That's pretty poor. Like, that's actually really bad. That is technically cheating. Like, you can't go and you can't scrape a guard out, because I'll tell you why. If, for example, a Pakistani player did that, or a Sri Lankan player did it, I could tell you now it would be all over the news. Really. Yeah, it would be all over the news. And I know that you're laughing about it, Venu, but I'm being serious. Like, it would literally be all over the news. It'd be all over the news, and they'd probably get banned. So I think it's funny to say, because like, it's not our teams, but it is stupid, considering that he's been done for Sandpapergate beforehand as well, and then he's been caught. He knows there's a stump mic and a stump camera, and he's literally gone into Pant's stance as a left-hander, and he's done it, and it's really, really stupid. Pant's seen it anyway, because like, I saw straight after he came and he sorted out the guard. But the issue with me is that it's almost like Australia reverts to type, and then that is, as Venu alluded to, maybe a mentality thing. But overall, do they have a strong mentality? It doesn't come across that way. When it's not all going their own way, it seems like they revert to type, and it's pretty poor form. And Steve Smith, I don't think is a bad person, but I think he's been ingrained in some of these players to act, in that way, which is a pretty petty way, to be honest with you. It's not a big incident. It's not like he's scuffing up the ball, etc. But it's still poor. That's the issue.
It's not gentleman's game, right? It's not the right etiquette to perform.
It's not the spirit of the game.
It's a win at all costs. It's a win at all cost mentality,
which is poor, because that's not the spirit of the game, right? You got to win in the right ways, I think. And like, for example, I was going to mention that you were guys talking about the track being like a road. To be honest, what they could have done is, Shane Warne alluded to this a couple of days ago. He said, I'd tell the seamers to get their long spikes on, right? And you can do it. That's fine. That's what they should have done. Mitchell Stark, for example, they should have told him, because he's a left-hander. So Nathan Lyon, it would have created more rough for him, right? They should have told Mitchell Stark, go in and really put your foot down when you're running in onto the pitch, and where, like, basically go in and you can scratch up, as long as you do it like whilst you're bowling, it's fine. And they could have done that.
Every team I can think of, like Australia, England, New Zealand, Pakistan, India, they've all done that. I remember, like, ages ago, I remember Shane Warne talking about this, that, I used to ask Brett Lee to kind of wear those spikes, because he used to run quite a way down in his follow-through. And that's why Shane Warne could go around the wicket and get the ball to spin. Like, yeah, it's a common tactic, which again, obviously, the Aussies didn't use in this specific match. But yeah, I don't think it's reverting to type or anything. It's just that's how they've done it previously, and it's just like mental strength, I guess, is probably what you're talking, kind of alluding to.
That is reverting to type though, because that's what they're used to doing. That's what I mean. Do you know what I mean? It's like mentally ingrained in them. That is that what you're saying? Like that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to not.
You're trying to say it in a nicer way.
No, I'm trying to not pigeonhole them into that, because I don't think Australian players are generally like that. They have done this type of stuff, but I don't think this is the trait that like, fine, Australia is full of criminals. Apparently, that's why Australia.
No. I'm not saying that the players individually are like that, because I'm pretty sure if you see them play for different teams, they won't be like that. Yeah. I think it's an Australian team mentality. Unfortunately, around. That's what I think it is. And I think as a collective, when something's not going their way, then that they kind of resort to it. And I'm not saying if it was any other team, I'd give them slack. I'd give them,
of course,
I'd be saying the same thing, because I actually really like Australia, and like I think you both know that I wanted Australia to win this Test match, but I've got to be fair, right? I said about the rishabhpant thing, and I said that I thought that was a bit dodge, because I do think it's a bit dodge, and I also think this is dodgy as well. So I just think you've got to be careful, especially after you said, Ashton, about the racism stuff going on as well. Then you've got to be a little bit clever about how you approach the game after that. Like, it doesn't really help them in any way, shape, or form. It just looks bad. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much on that. But yeah, for me, it's just kind of poor. Because if I saw someone do that when I was playing just in the club level, I'd be like, "What the hell are you doing?" And this isn't this international level, so it's a whole different level. In terms of like performances, etc., Venu, Cameron Green performed really well, but with the ball, he was a little bit. Obviously, he didn't bowl too much at all. What do you see his? I guess in the fourth Test, do you think they're going to use him in a similar way, or do you think they'll utilise him more with the ball after that performance?
I think they need to utilise him more with the ball. I think they need Cameron Green to develop into a Ben Stokes type player, where I was alluded to earlier about Neil Wagner being an enforcer. You could say the same for Ben Stokes for England, that he's an enforcer. Ben Stokes comes on. He did this in South Africa last year, where they needed a couple of wickets from somewhere, and he got those wickets. And they need a bowler to do that. And the thing is, you can't always ask Pat Cummins to come in and get your wickets after putting shift in early on in innings. So you need someone more fresh. And the fact that he only bowled 5 overs was quite disappointing, really. And hopefully he'll be used a lot more in the. So he used 5 overs in the first innings and only 7 overs in the second innings. So only 12 overs in total. And quite disappointing from Green, because I'm sure I liked him to develop into an all-rounder.
Yeah, and it's disappointing. I discussed this with you, Asher, before about Marnus Labuschagne coming on to bowl before Cameron Green, which doesn't give someone confidence, right? When a part-timer comes in before you, especially as a spinner in the first innings, which is bizarre. But anyway, in terms of Will Pucovski making his debut, I thought it was really impressive in the first innings. Actually, before we do that, because I think this is a really important point to make, Australia's fielding. So it's funny because I was watching the match, right? And at the start, I thought, this is quality. Like, Matthew Wade stopped, I think it was a cover drive from Pant. He ran across, it was just ridiculous. They were so good in the field. And it's just what I expected of Australia, right? That's how good they are. They're supposed to be an A-star, A-plus fielding outfit. But then, obviously, Timpaine dropped 1, and then he dropped 2. And the fielding for Australia deteriorated as the day went on. And as Venu likes to say, and I think it's true, catchers do win matches. Ashton, what do you think in terms of Australia? Timpaine said it's the worst. It's probably one of the worst times behind the stumps he's ever had. I mean, I don't think I'd ever say that Australia have had a bad day in the field, but they have.
Yeah, they definitely have. Timpaine averages 1 drop per match usually when he's playing in Australia, and he had 3 drops in one day. Not even in just the entire innings, just on this one day, he's dropped 3 catches. Right? I think he's right in the sense that this is his worst day. But in general, we saw a drop from Sean Abbott. We saw Matthew Wade miss a couple as well, even when he was very close at the start of the in the first innings for India. He did miss a couple of. I know they weren't catches, but they were still close calls. Like he went back up and he couldn't take those. Then there were a couple in the slips, which I would expect Australia's side to actually gobble them up. Those be catches rather than close calls or that just bounced in front of me. Knowing the team that I expect Australia to perform, like they probably just extend their arms and actually dive forward as well as dive to the side. So yeah, it's been a surprise, and it's not just one person fielding badly. I think it's in general they haven't fielded particularly well. Like, were we on the stream together when we saw that overthrow? When Australia was
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Australia just look tired. Plus I don't know exactly, but I don't think Australia has had to bowl for so long in a test match, right? Or field for so long in a test match in quite some time. It's 131 overs. It's a full day they've been in the field in Australia. So they don't know how that feels a lot of the time. It's usually the opposing team, the team that's being hosted, that's in the field for over a day. So this is something they're not used to, which is also why I think, especially today, they looked worn out, looked tired. Like Pat Cummins didn't bowl as many overs today as he potentially could have, in my personal opinion. I think he only bowled about 16, 17 overs.
Yeah, so 26 in total, yes.
Yeah, so 26 in total. But what we know of Pat Cummins, he'd bowl 8 to 9 over spells, 3 times in that entire day. So he looked a bit tired. He was a bit down on pace, which is why he got a bit of a spanking as well by rishabhpant later on, and Pujara with those three shots for 4. So yeah, I think they were just tired. That's the best excuse I can give you. But honestly, Australia looked a shadow of the side that I expect them to. Go on, Venu.
Go on, Venu.
Maybe it's a bit of arrogance from the Aussies. Maybe they think that we've got the best bowling attack in the world, and we expect teams just to be blown away. And I don't think they're mentally used to grinding out, a victory. When a team takes you to the 12th round of a let's put a boxing analogy here, they don't deliver the goods, and
They gas out.
And I think it's a mentality thing. I really think it's a mentality thing. It's not a skill thing. It's a mentality thing.
Yeah, mentality out of their comfort zone. I think they're both very good points from both of you. I just think India made them feel uncomfortable, I think, was the issue. And after pretty much 4 days of Australia dominating, that is the beauty of Test cricket in a way that you can have one very good day and you can turn the tide. And that's what happened. Obviously, didn't turn it all the way to a win, but to a draw. Go on, Vinny.
When Australian players are chirping at you and trying to get into your head, that's a good sign, because they're resorting to that. And I think the Indian players, I think they knew that, and
it fueled the fire, didn't it? It backfired.
Exactly. Yeah, backfired on them, and I do think it's a big time mentality thing.
Yeah, 100%. And before we wrap up, actually, as well, I think it's worth noting and talking about Labuschagne and Smith back in form, which is a very good sign for Australia, despite obviously the disappointment of only picking up a draw after being in a commanding position. Asjad, how good have Labuschagne and Smith looked? Smith obviously getting 100 in the first innings and an 80 odd in the second, and Labuschagne getting 50s in both, unfortunately falling very agonizingly short in the first innings on 91 as well. How did you rate them, and good to see them back?
Yeah, good to see them back for sure, because Australia really, really needed them to do anything in these 2 innings for sure. Thankfully, Cameron Green came good as well in the second innings, but otherwise, it's just Labuschagne and Smith show for me from the Australian standpoint in terms of the batting. And just to mention, you mentioned about Pucovski earlier, that it was his debut. He batted very well in the first innings. He's injured. He hurt his shoulder. David Warner is also back, probably injured. So they're going to lose that opening partnership that looked so good. That's probably not going to play in Gabba.
They're going to have to ask Joe Burns to come back.
Yeah, maybe. They'll get Matthew Wade and Marcus Harris probably to open or something like that. So that's going to be a bit depressing from an Australian standpoint. But yeah, I was very impressed. I felt bad for Labuschagne, especially in the first innings, where he got to 90 and then he got out. And in the second innings, I think Australia were, as maybe, I think Venu said, maybe a little arrogant about, oh, we're going to get, like Smith, I'm going to get 100, and then he got out. And in terms of the way they kind of batted to get and bowled in that final day, I think was a bit un-Australian like. I'm going to keep talking about day 5 mainly because that's the freshest in my head. But I think on that day, they've just shown how that they're not unbreakable. They're not like, it's not an impossible task to defeat them or at least draw with them, you know?
Yeah.
Even
thing is, they set up the match perfectly, to be honest, going into the end of day 4 and end of day 5. If you ask any team and say, how do you want to win this match when you're batting first, this is the ideal. And they declared, right, in the second innings. So you normally, when a team declares, that means that they're going to go on and dominate the rest of the test match. So I think here is a case of, as to sum up, that India did very well to recover from a losing position, and they did do well to escape. And Australia, as I think both of you have said very well, is that it's a mental block, and also they were putting in an uncomfortable position where they just didn't come up with the goods, and they potentially did gas out. And Nathan Lyon wasn't able to come up with his usual, I guess, 5th day burst and get that turn and bounce he usually does. And the quicks, unfortunately, weren't able to produce the goods instead. Yeah, okay. I think that's all from me. The only thing I wanted to mention is Saini made his debut. I thought he looked very up and down. I should re-mention this. I don't want to go into too much. He was bowling pretty waywardly, absolute peach to Matthew Wade, but that's because he's a left-hander, as I said, and that would have been, he was bowling a lot down leg side like that, and then as soon as he bowled to the left-hander, what would have been going down leg side to a right-hander was a perfect delivery to the left-hander, and it shaped away as well. It was a beautiful delivery, to be fair. I don't want to take too much away from him. I don't think they'll be looking at him thinking he is I don't think he stamped his authority after this performance, if I'm being honest with you. But I think they'll be looking at him to stay in the squad, and they'll think at least he can pick up some wickets here. But bowling-wise, they do look a bit weak, considering they've got a couple of frontline seamers missing, for sure. Is there anything you guys want to touch upon before we wrap up here?
I wanted to talk about the amount of injuries India have accumulated now. It's, as you were saying, it's quite a lot, and hopefully, they'll have a similar team. They feel a similar team to what they had today, and hopefully the Brisbane Test will be a good one. I'm really looking forward to that. It's kind of a decider. And just to add, India just need a win or a draw to retain the Border Gavaskar Trophy, considering they won the last series. So they only need 2 out of 3 results, whereas Australia need to win that series. So I'm really looking forward to that Test match.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Pucovski being out of it is a big plus for India, and also Warner potentially as well. I don't know who they're going to open with. They might go with Wade, and then again, I don't know. They're going to have to record Joe Burns. I don't know who they're going to go with at the top. So it's going to be really intriguing to see what happens there. One thing I would say, it's a shame, just like even the Sri Lanka-South Africa series, that you don't see the strongest sides from both teams, to be honest with you. I think that has been, because even Warner, you could tell he's not 100% fit. So you're really seeing a 50% David Warner. Go on, Venu.
I don't know. I was thinking about this, all these injuries that have been accumulating from the Sri Lanka series, and also
because they've been having a break from cricket. Do you think?
I think one thing, I was going to say, is maybe because of the COVID situation, the fact that they haven't played cricket for so long. Maybe the reason is such a different working environment. The fact that even for us, that we have to work from home and they have to isolate in bubbles.
It's like staying in their rooms all day probably isn't helping them, because
probably a factor. Maybe
up.
And maybe the fact they're just playing a lot of cricket nowadays. They're just cramming a lot of series into. So that's something we could discuss about the work of the cricketers. But I think there's something I had to say that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Ashad, anything else you want to touch upon before we wrap up?
No, I think we've covered every point. I was going to cover the injuries, so thank you, Venu, for talking about that already. But no, I think the 4th test will be very interesting. It'll be like a final in a way. So let's see how it goes.
Yep, for sure. I think injuries gone very quickly.
As I should say, it's going to be a final. And can I just say, you know, you got to love Test cricket. That was such a good advertisement with Test cricket. It was got to love it. Love it.
Yep, the epitome of the sport for sure. Okay, thank you very much, guys, for both being on, Venu and Asjad as well. And guys, please make sure that you check out Venu's weekly segment and also Asjad's channel, Cricket4Us 2.0. And please make sure you subscribe to Quality Shot, which will be probably somewhere up here, and Cricket4Us 2.0, which will be somewhere up here probably. So subscribe to both of them, and I'll put also the playlist for Venu's weekly cricket catch up as well at the end of this video as well. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next video.